Julian and I founded our logistics firm 8 years ago. I handled the technology, building a proprietary routing and data analytics platform that allowed us to scale rapidly. Julian handled the venture capital and corporate financing. As the company grew into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, Julian's greed grew with it. He began demanding a larger share of the profits, claiming that financing was more valuable than the software architecture. I refused to change our equal partnership agreement. That is when Julian decided to eliminate me entirely. He secretly partnered with a predatory private equity firm based overseas. Together, they drafted a fraudulent amendment to our corporate bylaws, using an old digital scan of my signature from a previous insurance document to authorize the change. This fake amendment downgraded my 50% ownership into non-voting minority shares. When the liquidators arrived on Monday morning, Julian thought the game was already over. He had already signed the final closing documents to sell our company for $6 million, with the entire payout routed straight to a shell corporation he controlled in the Cayman Islands. He told me I was nothing but a glorified programmer and hung up the phone. Julian assumed I would fall into deep financial despair, file a standard civil lawsuit, and spend the next 5 years drowning in corporate legal fees while he lived in luxury abroad. He didn't understand that when you control the servers, you control reality. I drove straight to my home office, fired up my secure terminal, and accessed our secondary, off-site cloud server matrix that Julian didn't even know existed. When I built our logistics network, I implemented a strict zero-trust security framework. Any modification to corporate governance files or share distribution required a physical security key verification, not just a digital signature. I pulled the master access logs for the day Julian claimed I signed the amendment. The logs showed that no physical key was ever used. Instead, Julian's personal corporate user profile had uploaded the document from his private laptop at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. He had bypassed our security protocols by using a temporary administrator override code meant only for network emergencies. But Julian's biggest mistake was draining our active operational accounts to show the buyers that the company had no outstanding liabilities. He transferred $400,000 of our working capital into his shell account on Monday morning. Because our software platform automatically tracks and reports high-value asset movements to our corporate bank under anti-money laundering compliance laws, his unverified transfer immediately looked highly suspicious. I compiled the forensic access logs, the physical security key discrepancy report, and the original unamended corporate charter into a single, encrypted legal brief. I didn't just send it to a local attorney. I delivered it directly to the Federal Bank Fraud Task Force and the Compliance Department of the International Wire Transfer Network. The corporate counterstrike was absolute execution. On Wednesday afternoon, Julian was at an upscale restaurant, celebrating the final wire transfer with his private equity handlers. Before the main course arrived, 2 federal agents accompanied by bank investigators entered the restaurant. They served Julian with an immediate emergency freeze order issued by the federal court. The $6 million acquisition payout, along with the $400,000 of stolen operational capital, was locked in transit before it could ever clear his offshore account. When Julian tried to claim it was a legitimate corporate buyout, the agents presented the forensic network logs proving he had used an emergency override code to forge my signature and bypass corporate verification. The private equity firm, realizing they had been pulled into a massive wire fraud scheme, immediately withdrew their offer, canceled the contract, and turned over all their communication with Julian to the authorities. The legal fallout completely destroyed Julian. The fraudulent amendment was officially declared null and void by a corporate judge within 72 hours, restoring my full 50% ownership and granting me sole operational control of the logistics firm. Because Julian had used a corporate entity to facilitate wire fraud and identity theft, the federal prosecutor filed formal charges carrying a mandatory minimum sentence. His personal assets were seized to pay for the massive disruption to our operations and the liquidator fees. Julian wanted to erase my lifetime of hard work to enrich himself, and he ended up losing his company, his wealth, and his freedom.